Hey, everybody, welcome back. I want to talk about our relationships with people from MAGA. My eyes are red. I was around a cat today and it was not cool, but that's part of my job. I want to talk about our relationships with people from MAGA. I've been struggling lately, and I hope you can relate, even if you're on MAGA side or regular folk side, Democrats and Republican side. But I want to talk about how hard it has been since Trump went into office the first time. It didn't really hit me until about the end of his term. It hit me before that, because your views just don't match up with theirs, right? And vice versa. And you've heard people in your family or your friends talking about Trump like he's the best thing since sliced bread, right? And you're like, mm-mm. And you felt some kind of way, but you were quiet, right? Or maybe you said something and then you guys got into an argument and maybe you didn't speak anymore. Or maybe you just agreed never to talk about politics again because you love each other, you know? And it's impossible to get anybody to believe in what you believe in when they believe in what they believe in. I hope that makes sense. But anyway, I've had this experience many times with many different people. And it is really hard to reconcile what is happening because a lot of people in my life that believe in him are genuinely good people, you know? And I gave them the benefit of the doubt because I just felt like they didn't know. They didn't know what they were in for, you know? And I was afraid of what we were in for. So I just gave them the grace. I listened to them, say what they had to say, and then I was like, "Wow, I hope you're right," kind of thing. But it has been getting worse lately, with this new round of abusive tactics from this administration, you know, and it has just come across my mind that the left and the right are just like siblings, fighting, sibling rivalry. One believes in one thing, one believes in the other, and then you got the parent that's like above them and controlling the narrative, like making them fight against each other. And I know this because I had a parent like that, you know? And we're all Americans. We may have different beliefs, but we're all Americans. And it is just really rough because when I think of what MAGA stands for, and in my mind, I believe they are very hateful and evil, and they don't care who they have to walk all over, but they want their guy to succeed. They can't stand anybody different than them, racist, misogynistic. They are very biased when it comes to their religion, and they're just cruel, you know? And it was hard for me to see the people in my life that way because I know how they are. And I was just really conflicted. Like, I just had like this cognitive dissonance going on all the time, and I didn't know what to do with it. And half the time, more than half the time, I just put it aside because I didn't know what to do with it, you know? And what can you do? you know? I meet people every day. I have clients. I have friends. I have family. And obviously, we all have different views, right? And there are some that I did not expect to be MAGA, and I was just like, whoa, kind of thing. Especially when they have a Hispanic background and they're for him, which doesn't make sense to me because look what's happening, you know? And it made me feel ugly inside for them. I felt resentment. I felt anger, fury, depression, denial, all of the things whenever I thought about them, especially now with the things that are happening, you know. Because to me, it was okay for them to believe what they wanted to believe in, right? But when it's affecting other people, when people are literally dying because of his policies, it is really hard for me to stay neutral when it comes to that. And when I see them, like my view of them is marred, it is stained. And I don't know what to do with that because every bone in my body wants to believe that they were who I thought they were, you know? And a big part of me wants to believe that maybe just don't know, right? Because it's just easier to think that. And another part of me thinks that they just don't know. They don't know all of the things. They haven't done the research. They don't follow the things he's doing closely. They don't see the numbers because he hides the numbers. They don't see it. They don't want to see it. You know? Look at the things that are coming out now from the Trumpstein files. And they're still backing him. And it is so frustrating. So frustrating. And it's so sad. Like, I've cried. I've cried so much thinking about my friends and family who believe in that. Knowing our culture, knowing how we were oppressed by America, how our indigenous tribes were taken out, and all of that. But they're voting for him, which doesn't make any sense. And the same thing happened with Venezuela, right? Venezuelans were like voting for him, and now all of a sudden they're getting deported, called drug traffickers and all these things and criminals, and taken to El Salvador and things like that. And then he went and kidnapped their president, and I was like, oh no. And a lot of people coming after me, and they're like, oh, why would you say that? He's a criminal, he's a bad person, he's a bad leader. But there are people on the streets now in Venezuela fighting to get him back. There's our reason. Okay? And we should have minded our own business, you know. So getting back to the topic, it is just really hard because I love those close to me. I have clients who just see one side of the story. They just watch Fox News and they come to me and they say, hey, can you believe this? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, I feel like saying, you got to look at both sides of the story. Like, you just can't watch one news channel. You got to look at everything and then make up your own mind. You can't just rely on one source that is, pretty much managed by him. The people that own the channels are subservient to him, and they just do whatever he wants them to do. And I know deep down inside my clients are good people. They love me. They've accepted me, and I love them. What do I do with that? I just don't know what to do with that. And I know I'm not the only one. And that's why I'm making this video. Because what do we do, right? I'm sorry. What do we do? To reach out to the other side. Because I know we've all tried, and it was not good. Not good at all. Because we think in totally different ways. So what do we do? when your family and business relationships and your friends' relationships are on the line, what do you do? Because nowadays, just being neutral doesn't seem to be enough. You know? You stayed quiet for a long time and dealt with a lot. And I'm sure they have too. But we're just both siblings of the same parents, right? Like we just don't get along. One is the golden child and one is the scapegoat. But we are all being abused, all of us together. But we cannot see eye to eye. We cannot reach each other. And it's not until you realize that your parent, Mr. Trump, is the problem. We can get back together and be stronger than ever. I'm sorry, it's hard for me to talk today because of the allergies. But you know, he's okay with anybody that just lets him do what he wants. But when you say no, that's it for you. And what bothers me the most is that MAGA thinks that they're special, right? Like that they're not going to be put down or banished, right? But they will. They will eventually. He says some horrific things about them, like, I don't need them anymore. I have all the votes that I need. And I wish my followers weren't such, didn't dress so trashy and all of the things. Like, he wanted to change from MAGA to Republicans, and they're still following him. And it is hard to understand. And I know in my heart, it's because they have hatred in their heart. I feel like they have intolerance in their heart. They have biases. They are intolerant of anybody different. And Trump has given them the permission to be them, which they've always had, It's just that society doesn't, appreciate someone that's hateful. And we see that now, with ICE and all the things that's going on now. But they ought to know by now that he does not have their best interests at heart. And it hurts me because we are all Americans. And they are okay with Trump cutting off programs that will hurt his people too. And what's sad about it is that they are okay with it as long as the cause is alive, right? Like, if I have to suffer, I'll do it because of the cause. If I have to, tighten up my belt, my wallet, if I have to pay more for shit, that's fine. So what? He did some crazy shit back in the day and it's all coming out now. But it's not who he is now. And making excuses for him at left and right and center. But it's because they were all bought in on the dream. And nobody else can fill the shoes that he fills. Barely fills. So, at the end of the day, it is up to them to say, I love him, but I don't agree with him anymore. I see now that he has been hurting me as well as the left. I see now that the same programs he's cut affect me too. And even if they don't affect me, one day maybe I'll need them and they'll be gone. All the programs will be gone. And it may take a lot for them to say, you know what? I'm done with Trump. I'm ready to be a Republican again, like a regular Republican. Because you can still get your agenda forward. You can still do the things that you need to do, what you believe in, right? I don't agree with a lot of the things they believe in, but you can still bring forth your agenda with your vote. That's why we have votes. You can get another Republican in there. You don't have to have him in there. He's making us look bad. You know, he has isolated us from our allies. He is picking fights with other countries. He is doing things that no other president would do, and he's still pushing the boundaries. He's got us to the point where we are so afraid, we are so panicked and so traumatized that I believe a lot of people will not vote because of it. You know, a lot of the things that he's doing in Minneapolis and all of that, Minnesota, it's just a scare tactic. He wants to make people scared to vote. He wants people to be afraid of him, to respect him. If you don't agree with him, guess what? You're getting punished. You know? And it's to the point where I've always believed this, but more now, that even his followers that don't agree with him anymore will not say it out loud because they know that they will have retaliation from those around them that believe in him still. You know? And I have this image in my head that one day they're hanging out and somebody just blurt something out like, I don't believe in that motherfucker no more. And then I'll be like, oh, thank God you said something. And everybody will be like, yeah, we need to do something. I hope that happens one day. You know? Our country is made up of everybody, not just the right or the left. You know? And what's been hard for me is getting back to how I see the people in my life that are on his side. Because just like they will have to deal with it, they will have to see Trump one day and be like, wow, I don't know what I was thinking. I'm disappointed in myself for falling for all this. I feel the same way. I feel like I didn't know this person. Are they still the person that I love? It really hurts. And I felt the divide. I felt the distance between me and them. Especially after I started making videos, I felt the distance. Because we don't agree on this. And to them, it is the end all and be all, how do you say, end all be all of everything. I don't know what to do with that. And I hope that we can all find some way to reconcile with each other, so that we can get our country back. Even if we don't agree, we should get our country back. We are losing all of the foundation that makes America great. We're losing our rights left and right. And I pray that our country can survive this. But it's going to take all of us united to deal with this. How do we reach them? Tell me in the comments, because I really don't know. How do we reach them? And sometimes I think I'm crazy because I'm like, what if I'm the one that needs to be reached, right? Because you start wondering, like, Am I the wrong one, right? But that's just how it is in an abusive relationship, right? Like when you have a parent that's narcissistic, you think you're the bad one, the other one thinks they're the bad one, and you're like, wow, you know, that one's being treated better than me, and the other one's saying the same thing about you. And then later on in life, like me and my sister did, we found out that we were both being abused, you know, that there were no favorites. We were just isolated from each other. We were made to hate each other, you know? We were made, and it seemed like on the outside, she was trying to get us close together, right? She would say, "You gotta hug your sister," kind of thing. And I was like, "Ugh," you know? It made me hate her more, right, at the time. I don't think I really hated her, but I was angry because I don't like anybody telling me how to feel. But later on in life, I distanced myself from my mom because I realized she was just toxic. And then, I waited patiently, and eventually my sister found out too. And then some time went by, and we were able to reconcile and put our stories together, which they don't like. Just like the files, right? They don't want it to come out because they know, like, that's the end. Like, if you find out all the truth, that's the end, you know? And now our relationship is stronger than ever, and we love each other. Yeah, sometimes, it's a little rough because, old fears come back and things like that. But for the most part, we are at peace now. You know, we are at peace. And we pray for each other and we love each other and we communicate and we work together, you know, for the common good, for our family. And that's just what I pray for all of us in America. We are divided big time. There may not be relationships you can get back, ever. Sometimes they do things that you cannot forgive. That they're your view of them has been messed up so much that you can never go back. And it's sad. We all need to do what's best for us. But sometimes, we can reach out to them. And I believe it's going to have to be in an accepting, loving way, in a non judgmental way, because the reflex is to say FAFO, get the day you voted for. I told you, you said this to me, and look now what's going on, and blah, blah, blah. But that will just push them away even more. That will just make them dig their heels in for him, you know? So think about it. Don't talk about politics for politics' sake. Just love on them. You don't have to talk politics. You could just love on them and say how much you've missed them and how you want them back in your life and things like that. And that may open a door for a conversation. And then in love, not in resentment, you guys can have a conversation. And if it gets crazy, then you can just say, we'll talk about it next time. But I think that love and acceptance is the way to go to unite us all. You know? It's going to be hard. Because once you feel some kind of way about somebody, it is hard to get out of that. I'm shocked at the people that follow him in my life. But I love them, so I'll give them grace. I'll allow them to believe what they want to believe. I don't have to allow them. They do what they want to do anyway, right? But I'm going to be accepting of that. And if I have to not talk about politics ever again with them, I won't. Because I love them, But at the same time, like, I know they're seeing things that we are seeing. And it is hurting them. They may not talk about it. They may not acknowledge it. They may excuse it away. They may say, there's no proof or whatever. And it may enrage you, but at the same time, when you love someone, you don't want them to hurt. You know, their idol is crashing and burning. And he's not everything that they thought that he was. So give them a little grace. Let them reach out to you. And just tell them, I'm sorry you're going through this, you know. And you can talk to me. I know we don't agree on things, but, you know, I'm here. Let's talk about what we can do to fix this. You know? So think about it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll post this tomorrow because I really want to watch it again. Because it is a really like crazy topic and people get all upset about it. But we've all been going through this, and I believe we can come back to each other and realize who the true enemy is. Our Papa, our president. He's the bad one. And we're just along for the ride together. You know? And if he truly loved them, they would not be getting friendly fire. You know? Let me know what you think. God bless.